This is one of those filler topics which are actually very obscure, not the ones that we are otherwise taught, not the ones students know of. But then some information on these kind of topics, these kind of issues always enrich you. And in case they ask you, you are not found entirely wanting. Okay, so quick short videos on some of these type of topics. From oceanography, I am talking about ocean expeditions. Expeditions as in those voyages, the discoveries, and some of the major ones and what were the contributions. Just enough content in case they ask you for about 1 page or 1.5 page. So the story starts with the age of the explorations. I'm sure all of us know about the Dark Age. Thereafter, we had the European Renaissance, the scientific curiosity and the need to explore and discover the world for economic and trade reasons. So we had a lot of expeditions going on, and the peak of the expeditions was the 15th and the 16th century, the 1400s and the 1500s. And I'm sure you know about Christopher Columbus, the voyages of Vasco da Gama, 1498. He discovers the sea route to India, through the Atlantic and rounding off the Cape of Good Hope. And we have the contributions of the very famous king Henry the Navigator from Portugal, who actually encouraged all these expeditions. So in this time, a lot of sea routes were discovered and people traveled quite a bit towards the east, discovering India and the East Indies. But in terms of scientific researches, in terms of discoveries the way we know it, it started mainly in the 19th century, 1800s. And 1800s, two very important people. One was Edward Forbes. This is 1850s. Edward Forbes, he researched on the ocean waters. He traveled quite a bit discussing and researching on salinity and temperature properties. And he came up with a conclusion that life existence is not possible beyond 500, 600 meters of water depth. He related that to temperature and pressure and so on. So you have to know this name called as Edward Forbes. The second very important name in the expeditions was John Murray, M-U-R-R-A-Y, Murray, and the most famous expedition called as the Challenger expedition. HMS Challenger, which was sponsored by the British back then, and the expedition was taken up in 1872. It was a 4-year project approximately, and this was a major discovery. This was the major one that told us a lot about the oceans. And if you look at the first mapping of the ocean floor, John Murray used the techniques of sounding, that he would lower ropes with bells, with some heavy bucket down below and some weight. He would lower the ropes and start measuring the ocean floor. Yes, it was not a very accurate method. There's always problems of hitting the bottom and not knowing about it, lot of slack in the ropes. But that was the beginning of some objective observations. And they discovered the ocean trenches, the Mariana Trench. They discovered the ocean floor is not exactly flat. So a lot of ocean floor mapping was done. Lot of studies on salinity and density was done. They took samples of the water, and most of us are familiar of a concept called as principle of constant proportions. The principle of constant proportions, where irrespective of the salinity, the proportion of the salts in the oceans is same. So this again was confirmed by Murray. It's also called as the Frosch-Hammer's principle, confirmed by Murray. Lot of study of ocean sediments. They dug up the ocean floor and they sampled sediments. And of course, they studied marine life too. In fact, Murray dismissed Edward Forbes' idea, and he proved Edward Forbes wrong, that life cannot exist beyond 500 or 600 meters. So enormous amount of information is generated here. So in many ways you can say Murray and the Challenger was the first major scientific expedition, and some books mention this as the golden age of the marine exploration. Around the time when Murray was doing all of this, we had the father-son team of Louis Agassiz and Alexander Agassiz. They are the same people who also have done a lot of work in studying the Ice Age and tracking and plotting the impact of Pleistocene Ice Age in parts of North America and in Europe. In fact, the ice shelf that covered North America is also referred to as the Agassiz ice shelf. So Agassiz also had expeditions and they also contributed. So this is more or less the older expeditions. Now the more recent ones. The more recent ones, 1950s, 60s onwards. I'm sure you all know about this man called Harry Hess. Harry Hess, along with his shipmate, the naval man Dides. Harry Hess himself, a marine geologist, and they came up with the concept of sea floor spreading. They studied the ocean floor, found the moor, found the trenches and the volcanism. They plotted the age of the ocean floor. They plotted the features along with sea mounts and gears. So I'm sure all of you know about Harry Hess. This is that major phase. And the expeditions that contribute to all of this, two very important ones. One is the Glomar expedition. Just as Murray's Challenger expedition was a kind of a watershed in ocean studies, in the more recent times, the Glomar expedition of 1968 was a major event. And Glomar expedition was more around the, more studying the geological facts about the ocean floor. Drilling through the ocean floor, sampling the rocks there. And the project was called as Deep Sea Drilling Project, where the rocks were studied and their composition and structures. And this Glomar expedition was discontinued, and it was continued in another form called as the Joyde's Resolution. Again, a US-sponsored expedition. It is still in operation since 1983, and we continue to discover and study and find new things about the ocean floor through the Joydes. 1980s and 1990s, there has been a shift towards studying the ocean water temperature, in particular the developments related to global warming. So now the studies around coral reef impact, ocean pollution, oil spills, the temperature variations through the depth because of global warming, the sea level rise. So those have been the more recent ones, and a lot of these studies have been documented as a part of the IPCC report. So more or less this captures the entire width of the major expeditions. If you expect a question, you can be ready for what were the contributions of Murray and Challenger, and maybe in brief something around Glomar and Joyde's Resolution. So you can actually take up a question which would be worded like, discuss the major ocean expeditions and write a note on the major findings. I repeat, discuss the major ocean expeditions of the past and write a note on the sum of the major findings. So let the answer be more around the works of Murray and a listing of what he had done and some passing reference to the Glomar expedition. Now quickly, as we have been doing, I'll take you through the textbook. This time you need Oceanography by Savindra Singh. So by now I think all of you know me as teaching from the textbooks. Geomorphology by Savindra Singh, we had Climatology by Savindra Singh, and this time we have Oceanographies by Savindra Singh. Again, the editions have changed, but the page numbers haven't really differed much, so that helps us. Now what you can look up is page number 14. Page 14, first column, there is a quick reference to Christopher Columbus. You have Henry the Navigator, okay, and Bartholomew Dias, very important again, surveying South Atlantic around Cape Agulhas. We have the Ferdinand Magellan. I should have mentioned Magellan also here, the man who first circumscribed the globe on a marine expedition. And we also have a passage named after him, the Magellan Strait between Terra del Fuego and the rest of mainland South America. And we also have lot of map making. If you look at page number 14, second column, last paragraph, there's a reference to Gerard Mercator. This is the man, or Gerard Kramer, otherwise known as. He is the man who gave us the famous Mercator's map. It's a rectangular projection where the vertical meridians and the latitudes intersect at right angles. It's a very famous one and used for navigation purpose because it preserves the direction, okay, irrespective of what the distance between the locations are. There's one type of projections you can know. So Mercators. So all about the age of explorations here. Then you may look up page number 17, second column. There is a reference to Edward Forbes. Edward Forbes, a marine biologist, and he studies parts of the northern Atlantic and the Mediterranean Sea. He publishes a book, The History of British Starfishes, and studies the distribution of marine life. And he made this statement that marine life cannot survive below the depth of 600 meters. Okay, page 17, the section on Edward Forbes, I was reading the last 6 lines. Okay, the distribution of marine life, he concluded that marine life cannot survive below the depth of 600 meters. Okay, so this is what Murray ultimately disproved and found is possible, and he did find evidences of life deep down there. Page number 18, the period of Challenger expedition, and this is the expedition commanded by Charles Thomson, and even Murray was a part of this eventually. And the agenda of this was, you have a small listing, second column, to measure and record the atmospheric meteorological conditions, the depth of oceans, sample the marine organisms. We have the ocean bottom topography study, marine sediments, ocean water and seawater, the temperature of the seawater, and so on. So in this expedition, John Murray was an important man, but the expedition was led by Charles Wyville Thomson, 1872. And page number 19, you have a proper map, the route that the ship had taken across Atlantic and parts of Pacific, and then back again. So you can look up these points here. Page number 20, first column, there are a list of what were the major findings. Okay, the following are the major findings and achievements of Challenger expedition. So about the life below 600 meters, Mariana Trench discovered. They also discovered manganese nodules. Okay, manganese nodules, those stone-like accumulations, concretions we find on the ocean floor, which are magnesium, which are cobalt, which are copper-rich, okay, say stones. So those again were discovered on the oceans. And the point number 4 talks about the principle of constant proportion, which is about the salt composition. So you could take this up, and page number 20, second column, we have a small discussion on Agassiz and the contributions of Louis and Alexander Agassiz. So this more or less takes care of the 19th century expeditions. Now page number 23, first column, we have the deep sea drilling project. The deep sea drilling project, page 23, first column, DSDP with the vessel called as Glomar, Glomar Challenger. That's why it's also called as the Glomar expedition. And below that, you also have the mention of Joyde's resolution project, which was extension of the GLOMAR. Okay, and they both are about the geological studies, rocks, basalt, ocean floor, and the rest. And page number 24, there is some discussion on the climatic aspects of temperatures and how they impact the marine environment, the observations of which are under IPCC. So this more or less captures the expeditions. I will suggest you rewind this video a couple of times, take down your noting, take down the jottings or textbooks, and try answering this question. What were the major expeditions? And write a note on the discoveries associated with some of the expeditions. So thank you.